Ashraya Prabhu ki Jai. Hare Krishna, welcome. So nice to see you. Many, many years. We've been looking forward to hearing you. And thank you for joining us. I know it's early where you are, and really appreciate you coming on to this conference call. So who's present are God brothers, God sisters, disciples of His Holiness Krishna Swami Maharaj. And if any devotee doesn't know Prabhu, I'd just like to very quickly introduce you, if that's okay, Father Prabhu. Wonderful devotee in the sense we have had an association of Prabhu for good on 30 years, 34 years. Maharaj and Brother Prabhu were very, very good friends, and from the early days, from what I remember, one of the first occasions I remember is when Brother Prabhu brought one of those mobile phones. They just came on the market in that time. It was a huge brick, and Brother Prabhu came and he said to His Holiness Krishna Swami Maharaj, "This is for you. I need to be in touch with you all the time." Keep it with you. And Maharaj was so chuffed with that because it was just something very, very unusual. And what Prabhu did was showed his wonderful interaction with Maharaj. So Prabhu is his disciple of his Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, his temple president at that time at Radha Landaneshwar. And now, are you in Australia at the moment?
Yes, yes.
I'd like to thank you again for joining us, and perhaps you can share some of those wonderful memories with Maharaj. Many devotees would not have heard you before. They're from South Africa, Mauritius, Canada, India, and America.
My goodness. Oh. How long?
As long as you like. Whatever's easy for you.
Well, I have to leave this meeting by 10 to the next hour. So that's 40 minutes away, but I don't think I should carry on for 40 minutes, should I?
We've done everything from our side. We've recalled that time when Maharaj left, and then what they did with the ashes, and the pilgrimage the devotees did, and we've done the prayers that we wanted to do. So you can have as much time as you like.
I see there's 33 people watching, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm. But within that, there'll be families. So probably about 50.
Sorry?
Probably about 50. There'll be families watching as well within those numbers.
Hare Krishna Madhusudan Prabhu.
And devotees should show yourselves.
I'm going to switch to gallery view. I want to see everybody.
Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. So do I.
Everybody's hiding. Let's see everybody. Yeah. I have to put my silly face on the screen, so let's see everyone else.
It's wonderful to see you, Prabhu.
Well, wonderful to be here.
From the first days of the manor, when Maharaj was there as well, and I've met you on several occasions, and
yes,
shared quite a few realizations and moments with you, and always hold you close to my heart in many ways, and remember you often. But it's wonderful to see you. Lovely to hear from you now.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. these bittersweet experiences are just that. They're bitter, but they're sweet. I'm thinking of Krishna Das Swami in regard to that kind of duality. We talk about bittersweet. I have a friend, I guess everybody's heard of korma. Korma, that's cooking with korma. And I remember in the early days when I first joined the temple in Melbourne, he used to cook very big feasts. He was a very, very good cook. And we used to have wonderful feasts. And korma, in many ways, he was like Krishna Das Swami. And I'm thinking about how he used to cook a pineapple chutney for feasts. And he would always promote his chutney as being too hot to bear, too sweet to resist. And korma was like that, is like that. And I'm thinking of our Krishna Das Swami. And he was like that. Too hot to bear, but too sweet to resist. I think that in many ways sums up his essential nature. You know, I don't even like to talk about departed Vaishnavas in the past tense. Of course, we are forced in this world to divide time into past, present, and future. And really all we have is the present. If you think now is the future of the past, and now is the past of what will be the future. But we are always in now. And now we gather together to remember departed Vaishnava. But we have to also remember what Srila Bhakti Vinod wrote on the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur. He reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die. When thou art living still in sound, a Vaishnava dies to live, and living tries to spread the holy name around. Or sometimes people say the holy life around. And in this way, I think we see the too hot to bear aspect of Krishna Das Swami. From my memories of him, from the first time I met him, I came to England in 1982. And at that time, Krishna Das Swami was living at Bhaktivedanta Manor. He was living very austerely. He lived with the brahmacharis. And the brahmachari ashram in Bhaktivedanta Manor was not as, or was nowhere near as what you would say luxurious as it is now. It was a very austere place. And Krishna Das Swami, he was not a young man at that stage. The ashram was full of young men. And they were coming and they were going. Not a lot of them were staying. but he was living there amongst them in a very humble way. And he was preaching very vigorously, very, very vigorously. And I remember him at the same time being immediately friendly to me. Yeah, his smile was so sweet. And there's a saying, you never get a second chance at first impressions. You never get a second chance at first impressions. And as devotees, we appreciate the good qualities and we overlook what are called the bad qualities. But what I found with, and this is innocence, this is actually innocence. We don't look for the bad in people, we look for the good. And that smile of his was a very, very strong indication of his actually childlike innocence. Childlike innocence. He was not a man who was corrupt. His core was very innocent and uncorrupted. We talk about innocence and experience. And unfortunately, from an innocent state in life, we get exposed to corrupting experience, especially in this age of Kali. Very corrupt situation, very violent situation, very bewildering and confusing situation, very frustrating situation. All of those things and all of those conditions, as life goes by, give us bad experience. And bad experience can make us bitter and angry and mean-natured. But I'm thinking again of first experiences of meeting Krishna Das Swami and remembering his smile and that childlike innocence, that although on the one hand, he was actually a very experienced person and he had been exposed in his life to a lot of violence. He was a witness to partition in India, and that was a very, very violent time. And there's such a thing we're all aware of called samskaras. I like that word in many ways. It's because it has the word scar in it. Mm. Of course, there's good samskars and there's bad samskars, but then in the totality of material existence, Prabhupada used to explain, there might be piety, there might be impiety, there might be materially good things or materially bad things, auspicious, inauspicious. But in the overall picture, material world is all bad. And so whether one is undergoing pious or impious reactions from past situations in one's life, there's a scar in the consciousness. And it creates a material demeanor, a state of mind, a disposition, a predisposition to responding to situations in a particular way. So first of all, I remember that smile of Krishna Das Swami, and that innocent, childlike glee that he had of being with people. He loved people. He loved people. He was a personalist. First and foremost, he was a personalist. And he would, and I remember that very, very clearly. He was very personal. And he was always very personal with me. There were quite long periods of time when we didn't see each other. Just like Madhusudan Prabhu and Nabhinandan Prabhu, I remember there are quite long periods over the last, well, I think, 30, 35 years now, where we haven't seen each other. But you can reflect on that phenomenon that actually some of your best friends are people you don't see very often. And the thing that you can, about them that enables you to put them in that category of best friend is that there's a sweetness about the relationship which is always there, which is there from the beginning, and it doesn't become tarnished, it doesn't become lost by the influence of, as they say, the influence of time and tide. Or in Chinese, they have the term feng shui, which literally means wind and water. So wind and water are like time. Or another thing they have, another term is time and tide. Time and tide wait for no man. And withstanding the influence of time is a very important factor in the life of a devotee, because we are in this material world until we leave this material world. And just because we have become or entered into this path of becoming again what we really are, becoming conscious servants of Krishna, we have to deal with the relentless onslaught of the material energy. And the relentless onslaught of the material energy is always destructive. The inevitability of these things is something which very early in this life we have to learn, as Krishna says, we have to learn to tolerate. It's very interesting that he says, never was there a time when you and I did not exist, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be, all these kings. And then he says immediately, as the soul is passing in this life from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. And then immediately he says, Matraspashas tukuntaya, shitoshna sukadukada, agama apayano nityas, tongues titikshas vavarata. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress is like and disappearance, the appearance and disappearance, the non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress is like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. One must learn to tolerate these things without being disturbed. This is what makes us dhira, sober. And it's very important to understand why Krishna makes that statement immediately after he makes the statements that are prior to it. The two verses prior to it give us very good news, that we are all eternal living entities, eternal individual living entities who are sojourning in this material world. But we are under the influence of this material energy in the form of the three modes of material nature, and we have to sober up from their influence by learning to tolerate the pains and pleasures of material existence. So I'm thinking again of that smile, that innocent smile, that innocent, warm, welcoming, friendly, joyful smile. That he was a man who suffered a lot in his life, was exposed to the miseries of Adhyatmic, Adhibautic, and Adhidaivic, just like anyone else, but also more in many ways, because he lived through very troubled times as a young person. And what happens to us in our early life is where a lot of the samskaras of a lifetime get laid down. There's another saying, there's nothing you can do about what happens to you, but what you have control over is how you respond to what happens to you. And trying situations in life, challenging situations in life, like for all of us, because we're all, you and I, are orphans in this world. And that's a very trying and challenging thing that happens. So trying and challenging things occur all the time in life. And each one of them is like a fork in the road. And there's basically a choice that we have to make at those forks in the road. Some people say crossroads. You come to a crossroad, you can go that way, you can go that way, or you can go that way. Really, it's a fork in the road. It's a threefold fork. Or there's a place here in Sydney called Seven Ways, where actually 7 roads converge at one point. The point I'm getting at is things occur in life that you have no control over, because we're in a situation basically that we have no control over. We've been born, we're going to grow old. In the process, we're going to get ill, sometimes acutely ill, sometimes chronically ill, and then death is going to come, as sure as death. So Krishnadas Swami underwent very severe trials early in life through that time in India. Very, very difficult, crazy, violent times. And he was also chronically ill. We all know his health condition and how he had to tolerate so much discomfort in his body. All of this due to circumstances beyond his control. But he never became bitter about these things. He had bitter memories of things, but that's all right. That bitterness didn't seep into his fundamentally innocent consciousness. Because he was a very fortunate soul also, and he was aware of his good fortune in that he was born into Vaishnavism. Now, of course, we're all born into situations. And as we grow into adult life, we're again faced with a fork in the road. And that fork in the road contain the values that I've been inculcated into my consciousness in my childhood? Or am I going to give in to the false values of this world. This is the influence of time. And one of the qualities of a Vaishnava is that he does not bow to the influence of time. He does not bow to the influence of time. There's a poem by an American poet called Robert Frost, and it's called The Road Less Traveled. And he was a spiritualist, he was a transcendentalist, and he wrote this poem later in his life. And he talks about how at a certain point in his life, he took the road less traveled. He didn't go in the way of the majority of people. And as Vaishnavas, as practitioners of Vaishnavas, we have to understand that in this life, we are in a minority. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaya yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvata. Out of many, many thousands, out of millions. And indeed, in one lecture I heard Srila Prabhupada talked about trillions, because he aggregated that beyond human beings into all conditioned souls in the material world. Hardly one will endeavor for perfection. And then again, out of trillions who may achieve some kind of perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So Krishnadas Swami, by the virtue of his, obviously his previous practices, was born into Vaishnavism and grew up in Vaishnavism. But he withstood, he did not bow to the influence of time. So from a very early age, as a man, as a young man, he was a fiery Vaishnava. Fiery. And his preaching was, as I reflect now, back onto that little aphorism, sometimes too hot to bear. But then that smile would come, and it would be too sweet to resist. I remember one story Vichitravirya Prabhu told me that occurred before I came to England. We all know one thing Krishnadas Swami could not tolerate and would not tolerate was impersonalism and voidism. This is what actually made him very, very attracted to Srila Prabhupada, and caused him to actually give up his single-handed endeavors as a member of the Brahma Sampradaya and join in with ISKCON and become a loyal and dedicated member of the preaching mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada's pranams, we all know, say that Srila Prabhupada is very kindly preaching the instructions of Lord Chaitanya, the Gauravani, in Paschatya Deshatarana, in the Western countries that are full of impersonalism and voidism. And as preachers of Krishna consciousness, this is what we're up against. Impersonalism and voidism, not just in the Western countries, it's a global phenomenon now. This impersonalism and voidism is actually ruining the fabric of humanity people are becoming inhuman, not just animalistic, but now practically machines. And Krishnadas Swami was implacably and undefeatably on the side of personalism. And he would not tolerate impersonalism in any way, shape, or form. And Richard Treveri told me one time he was at an evening preaching program somewhere in South London, actually, with Krishnadas Kaviraj. And Krishnadas Kaviraj had just given one of his fiery talks about how we must become Krishna conscious. We must be devotees in this life. And in the question and answer period, one man who was there in the audience started talking impersonal philosophy, Mayavadi. This Krishna never existed. Krishna is simply a symbol of higher values that we all have to, all this sort of nonsense. And Krishnadas Swami became very angry at this, very fiery in response to it. But of course, somebody who is affected by this Mayavad philosophy is very much, this is why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says you must never hear this Sunyavadi philosophy, this Mayavad philosophy, because its contaminating effect is very, very deep and very pernicious. So it's very difficult to turn somebody around from that once they are in it. And it brings a conceit and an arrogance about it. As Prabhupada says, it's the last snare of Maya, because it satisfies the deepest, most envious desire of the conditioned soul, and that is, I am God. So Krishnadas Swami was very fiery in the face of this sort of thing. So Richard Revere explained that a very heated argument and exchange developed, and it was going nowhere because this man was intractable in his position and it was getting late. So then that smile came. All right, so we agreed to disagree. Okay, and he was, let's put an end to it now. But Krishnadas Swami, he really couldn't let that go. And as they were leaving, people were coming out to the car to see him off. And he was about to get in the car, and that man was there again in the crowd to say goodbye. And Krishnadas Swami just exploded and grabbed the man, started shaking him, saying, give this nonsense up, give this nonsense up. Which when I heard that story, I immediately thought of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mood, where if he would meet a Mayavadi sannyasi, Ekadanda sannyasi in the street, he would do that. He would go up to that person in the street and he would actually grab them and shake them and say, give this nonsense up. And I remember thinking when I heard that story, this is a man, this is an old school man. This is a no-nonsense man. I like this man. I like this mood. Of course, we have to temper that, and Maharaj was also good-tempered. But in situations like that, where such a person is causing such a disturbance and damaging the faith of innocent people, he would never stand by and just let that be. So, too hot to bear, too sweet to resist. So I only have a few more minutes, then I have to go. So I could talk all day about Krishna Das Swami. But what I want to say in conclusion is I'm forever grateful for his association and his friendship. There were times in the years that I was in England that were very difficult. And we all go through difficult times. Difficult times in this world are the norm, really. Durga means everything goes with difficulty, and the life of a devotee is also fraught with difficulties. But like I said, you never get a second chance at first impressions. And right from the time I met Krishna Das Swami, I realized he is a loyal friend. So there were times that were very difficult for me in those years, in the 1990s especially. And there's another saying that, you know, it's during the lean times you know who your real friends are. Fair weather friends. There are so many people who will be our friends during the good times. But during the bad times, the hard times, then you really know who your true friends are. So I have to end by saying to you how grateful I am for the friendship of Krishna Das Swami. And although we are gathering together to commemorate disappearance, yeah, he reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die. And like I said right at the beginning, I don't like to talk about a departed Vaishnava in the past sense, because he has not died. He has simply answered a call from his Guru Maharaj and Krishna and Srila Prabhupada to go on to his next phase of service. So there is no separation. There is no separation. So I consider him still my very dear friend. And I don't feel that he's gone from my life. He's certainly not gone from my heart. And I gather, especially at times like this when we focus in with memory, I gain a lot of strength and comfort from that in my life. So thank you for inviting me today. It's been a privilege and an honor to be here. And may Krishna Das Swami shower his blessings upon all of us. We all, there's a saying, when a Vaishnava is leaving this world, we pray to the Lord for their welfare. And then when that Vaishnava has departed from this world, we pray to them for our welfare. So let us all pray for the eternal welfare of Krishna Das Swami and pray to him that he is overseeing our welfare going forward in life. Thank you, Nabidandan, for inviting me. And thank you all for being so attentive. And it's a great pleasure to be here.
I'd like to thank you.
Krishna Das Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi.
Bhagavat Ashraya Prabhu ki.
I wanted to thank you very much, Bhagavat Prabhu. Your words are incredibly sweet and touching, and you gave wonderful insight into the philosophy as well. Really appreciate what you've done for us. I'd like to thank Mangala because I'd lost touch with you, and she reconnected and put us back in touch. So I really appreciate her contribution. And she just asked.
She's always Sava Mangala.
Right. Can we meet again like this? Arrange another session sometime in the future, a little bit more time friendly for you. I know it's 4 o'clock in the morning for you, isn't it? So perhaps.
Well, I'm all right. I'm all right with 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, really? Okay, brilliant. Is it possible maybe in after Janmashtami, after Radhastami, we can arrange something again and listen to your philosophy and listen a little bit of pastimes? But what you said resonates so nicely in terms of philosophy and also your experience with Maharaj. It's so good.
Well, you haven't got my bill for this session yet, so
No,
you better.
I wanted to ask you as well. I wanted to ask you for your account. If you could share that, please. We'd like to.
No, I'd be happy. I'd be happy, but you know, I'm always a little disconcerted that we have Zoom and we can all see each other, and so many people don't show themselves.
They're all shy.
I'll only do it if everybody agrees to let themselves be seen.
That sounds like a good plan.
Otherwise, we might as well just have a radio show.
I agree, thoroughly agree.
I agree with that, yeah. It's a good point.
You know, one of the things about Zoom is that you can be doing other things while you're listening to somebody. But in Sangha,
Yeah.
you don't want to be doing other things.
Yes.
We're gathering here to hear and give full attention to hearing and chanting. So I would appreciate it if in future people let themselves be seen. Plus then you get to know each other better.
It's too impersonal otherwise. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Anyways,
this was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I'm available. Yeah, let's get this festival season
out of the way
behind us in time, and then you contact me and we'll work something out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Hare Krishna to your wife.
Sarvamangala.
Hare Krishna.
She couldn't get up early this morning. We actually had I've got to go and wake her up now. So
Oh, give our regards and say Hari Bol.
I will.
Thank you.
I will. And thank you all very much. Nabi Nandan has my phone number here in Australia. You can give it to anyone and they can contact me on WhatsApp. Do you have my email?
No. But WhatsApp is good. WhatsApp is good.
WhatsApp is good. It's a good connection. So give everyone my Australian phone number, and any of you feel like you want to be in touch with me at any time, then feel free.
Fantastic. That's really kind of.
Actually, we were supposed to have been in England from the end of April to the end of June, but because of COVID, we couldn't come. So
right.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I am looking forward now to seeing you all again, and not just on Zoom, but hopefully getting back to England as soon as all this is opened out again.
Thank you. Bhagavat Ki Jai. Wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna, prabhu.
I'll take your leave now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Wow, that was amazing. It was really amazing. So, phew.
That was nice, Nabi, and I'm glad you brought him on the session.
Last time he mentioned this point was at the Vyas Puja of Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
How many years ago? About 7, 8 years in South London. He had tears in his eyes when he was saying, "You were there when I needed you the most." Yeah, Guru Maharaj was present at that time. And it was very, very touching. Very touching. Bhagavat Prabhu is always been a loyal friend of Maharaj.
Yeah, I've known him since the beginning of Manna, when I used to go and I used to see Krishna as a young man preaching in those days. And Bhagavat Ashraya was there as well. And I got to know Bhagavat Ashraya quite well.
Okay.
I used to see him at Rath Yatra, and then in Nottingham he had a little bit of business. He's had tough times as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's always been a very good friend of mine as well.
Mm.
Like Maharaj, he appreciates Maharaj. I would regard him as a very good friend of mine, like.
Yeah, we've had some challenging times.
And I think I've met him. I came to South London and he had been there as well. And
yeah, we had some challenging times. But one thing about Bhagavat Prabhu is, he just doesn't care about the past.
No.
So good in the sense that if you need him, he's there. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter about the challenging past.
No. He is very much now and in the moment, like he said, and then he lives the philosophy as well.
And what he said about Maharaj, that you find out your friends when you're down in the dumps.
Yeah.
That's exactly my situation. The few people, he was one of them with me. Like through my crazy situation, he was there. So I love the way Bhagavat Prabhu explained about Maharaj. And the philosophy he brought in as well. So it's not instrumental, it's philosophically based.
Really. So, yeah, thank you for bringing, and lovely to listen to him.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely.
Listen to everybody else. It was very nice listening to other devotees we haven't met. Nami Prabhu, you are very lucky that you have met them, but we have just heard them. It's nice to put the face and the voice together. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't see some faces, right? Priyavrata is gone.
That's shy. Don't worry. No. Don't worry.
At least we can getting to know some of the. He was like Atma. She sings very well, and
she's all right. We're training her. Just,
and then a few other devotees here, which I'm slowly getting to know as we share the realizations of Bhagavad Gita. And
Maitra Prabhu really sings from the heart, isn't he?
He's good, Maitri Rishi. And he went AWOL. Probably late in Mauritius. Oh, I'm still recording. Let me close that. Oh, Krishna.
well,
Bad things true about anybody.